Mapping the College Audition. I'm your host, Charlie Murphy, director of MTCA. That's Musical Theater College Auditions. Check us out at mtca.com. And today we've got Joan, Herrington, and Jay Berkow from Western Michigan University on the pod. For our newer listeners, this is another one of our college deep dive episodes where we explore the landscape of the college theater world and try to demystify this daunting audition process, one program at a time. All right, here we are. It is almost May 1st, always a big day in the MTCA world because it is our big website turnover day where we celebrate all of our amazing seniors and their successes. We're going to continue to post stuff throughout the month as more and more final decisions trickle in, but it is always really exciting for us to celebrate the whole class and all of their accomplishments at once. It was a really great year, and we are so proud of you all. And for our juniors and younger students, our MTCAers are doing spring masterclasses with college faculty right now as we speak and getting jazzed for the summer version in person. And if you are not yet an MTCAer, don't forget to check out our Meet MTCA workshop. That's this upcoming May 7th. That's a week from tomorrow at 8 p.m. Eastern. If you aren't able to attend the live one, you're welcome to sign up and be sent a link. I've gotten that question a few times. The answer is yes, you can do that. It is a free hour on Zoom where you'll meet a bunch of our amazing coaches, get to see examples of their work, and get to ask questions as you start to formulate your own map for the process. Of course, you only get to ask questions if you attend it live, but that's a little incentive to attend live, I guess. This is great for juniors. It's great. Those are like rising seniors, so class of 2026, and especially great for younger students. You're welcome to attend as a family or just as students, just parents, etc. All of that information, of course, is available at mtca.com. There's a little banner at the top you can click at mtca.com. So hopefully we'll see you there on May 7th at 8 p.m. Eastern. All right, let's get to it. I hope you enjoy this interview with Joan Herrington and Jay Berkow from Western Michigan University. Well, we are so excited to be joined by Joan Herrington and Jay Berkow from Western Michigan University. Joan has a BA from Wesleyan, an MA from City University Hunter College, and a PhD from the University of California, whereas Jay has a BA from Dartmouth College and an MFA from Purdue University. They are both actors, directors, and authors. I saw some books in both of those bios, and we're so excited to chat with them today. We're talking about Western Michigan, which is located in Kalamazoo, Michigan. They take classes of about 15 students. They offer degrees in BFA acting, BFA musical theater, and some other degrees as well. Jay, Joan, welcome on the show. How are you feeling today?
Thanks so much. Feeling good.
Thank you for having us.
We're so excited to have you. I'd love to hear a little bit. Of course, with both of you, I didn't even go into the bio there. Do you want to give me like a little brief sort of tidbits on sort of your journey to WMU in terms of your careers and sort of how you found yourself in the positions that you're currently in?
Sure. I was initially a dancer, and actually in high school, I danced with a company in Washington, D.C. called Feet First.
Oh, yeah. For those not watching the video, Jay's giving me dancer vibes already. Still looks like a dancer. He's initially a dancer. I still see
you're very sweet. In any case, but my passion was always directing. I went to Dartmouth. I majored actually in directing, even though I spent a lot of time in acting and dance and voice classes. Mm-hmm. I moved to New York pretty much right after graduation in a year prior to now.
Mm-hmm. Some ambiguous.
And I got very, very lucky. I booked 3 tours pretty much back to back. So I went out with Chorus Line, then La Cage, and Evita. Mm-hmm. And Evita was the only time I'd ever been to Kalamazoo. On the Evita tour, we did a stop here in Kalamazoo. And then I decided that really my passion was directing, and I went to grad school. I left New York. Yeah. I went to Purdue for 3 years, came back, and then exclusively focused on directing. I also have done quite a bit of writing. So off Broadway, I wrote and directed a show called Jolson and Company. Also did a show called, I did a lot of things at the York Theater York as well. And then worked regionally all over, mostly in Florida, but also in Virginia and California. And then kind of decided, as I was getting close to 40, that I really wanted to kind of stop the vagabond lifestyle. I was traveling most of my year and started looking for teaching positions. And this seemed to be the perfect match, actually. I came out here and fell in love with the school, fell in love with the program, really enjoyed meeting all of the faculty, and that's one of the main reasons I chose to come here, was what a collegial faculty it is and what a strong program it is. And I've been here 21 years.
I love it. And oh God, you're truly aging yourself there, Jay. You're giving us almost to the T.
Sorry.
Joan, what about you?
I'm from New York and started my career in New York, primarily as a director, short term as an actor and dramaturg. Went and worked in LA in the movie business for about 8 years, produced 4 feature films. Really, really missed the theater, so came back in again as director and dramaturg. Got really interested in education, worked at a university out there, and then came to Kalamazoo, like Jay. Again, I had, that view of the coast where everybody lives in New York or LA and there isn't anybody else in the world. Came out here and discovered really an incredible program, amazing students, decided I wanted to stay, still direct, dramaturg, worked recently at Cincinnati Playhouse, Oregon Shakespeare Festival. All of our faculty are working professionally, so we come in and out of Kalamazoo, but it's also a great place to live, great place to go to school. So
I love it. So you're already giving me hints at the program, but I'd love just to hear from your guys' perspective, like what is the ethos of the program? So, insofar as a WMU could be sort of distinguishable in terms of the kind of students that might show up there as opposed to other programs, what does it mean to be a WMU student?
I think the most important thing is we are educating storytellers. Everything we do is filtered through telling a story, creating a character, and engaging with an audience, whether you're acting, singing, or dancing. And frankly, we don't separate it. Basically, the freshman year in the music theater program, you learn all the kind of the parts. So start with your acting class and your voice class, and then all, of course, whatever dance classes you're placed into. But then starting your sophomore year, everything is brought together in a 2.5-year music theater workshop program where we get rid of those seams and lines. And it is about storytelling and acting through everything that you do. It's also an incredibly community-based program, and that, yes, it's competitive to get in, but once you're in, I would say that this is one of the most supportive, engaged programs with the students themselves. We also have a lot of opportunities for students to develop their own work and entrepreneurially as directors, as writers, and as performers. And I would say that one of the things that I always say to prospective students is it is our job to make sure that you have the technical skill set to be successful wherever you choose to pursue your art, whether it's New York or LA or Chicago. But it is not our job to tell you what happiness and success is. That is your job.
I love it. Talk me through a little bit of that specific curriculum. So some of those techniques you're talking about when we talk about acting, singing, dancing, especially as a musical theater major, what am I getting in the 4 years and how does that progression work?
Well, we don't separate the actors from the musical theater students at the very beginning of the program. We feel that core acting training is core acting training. And there's great value to blend them, right? If you're a musical theater performer, it is highly unlikely you will spend your entire career doing exclusively musical theater. Right.
So, and you mentioned we talked about a class like 15 musical theater majors, about that many actors. They're all together in classes. So maybe split up into different acting classes, but all mixed together.
Correct, right. They're not all in one room. We try to keep our class size about 15 or 16 in each room. But if you're a musical theater major, you're going to want to do legit shows. You're going to be doing TV. You're going to be doing film. So that core acting training with everyone working together, just recognizing and building the actor is really the start of our program. And then as students progress in the program, their training becomes a little bit more discipline specific. Where the music theater students, as Jay said, will move more into the music theater workshop, and the acting students will move more into acting classes specifically for them. But even the musical theater students, we're still training them in their upper years in media, film and television, so that they don't leave without those skills that are crucial to paying their bills.
And some things that are exceptional, for example, in our voice training, we have 4 voice teachers that work with musical theater exclusively. They are not borrowed from the voice area. They're not teaching our students. They are musical theater experts, and they are training you to musical theater. Singing right now is a moving train. There are so many styles that we're constantly incorporating, and composers are working with many, many different styles of music. And so our teachers are constantly re-educating and growing as artists. And we have a broad range of vocal teachers too, so that we can match each student up with a teacher that we think will be most beneficial. We also, one of the things that's really unusual about our program, I didn't think it was that unusual when I started here, but now I realize how unusual it is in terms of how we work with dancers. You are, first of all, much like the acting program or the acting progression, you're placed in your dance classes based on your technical skill set, not just because you're a freshman or sophomore in musical theater. And we don't separate the dance majors from musical theater majors. So you are pushed very hard in our what we call our tech level dance classes in ballet, jazz, tap, etc. You also can be a dance minor as well pursuing the music theater major and take advantage of all the dance classes that are offered in our dance department, including modern, hip hop, West African, contact improv, so many opportunities for dancers. And a lot of our students have gone on to be major dancers on Broadway in LA. And in fact, one of the things that's very exciting right now is one of our alums who was in 7 Broadway shows, including serving as dance captain for Hamilton and On the Town and Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, is now on faculty with us teaching multiple levels of jazz, as well as offering a musical theater styles class and choreographic shows with us. And his name is Mikey Winslow.
So cool. So cool. Let's talk a little bit about, so as an actor, and then I also want to talk about as a, potentially non-major, meaning maybe I'm not an acting or musical theater major at all. How does that work in terms of access to those classes? So if I was an actor who wanted to take some dance class, or I wanted to get some voice lessons, how does that work in terms of being able to cross that Rubicon? And then also a little bit about people who are maybe not majors at all.
Dance classes are required in the acting major. Not as many as in the musical theater major, but we do expect our actors to be able to have had some experience in dance. And a number of our actors are dance minors, the ones who are actually more interested in pursuing that. Students are able to take private voice lessons as an acting major. It's not part of their curriculum, but they can take private voice lessons. And sometimes we have students who blend. They come into one program or the other, and they have a specific interest in broadening their horizons in the opposite area. So then we make some adjustments in curriculum for them.
We're also in development on a musical theater certificate program in the summers where acting majors and dance majors, anyone who's not a musical theater major, can come to the university for a relatively short amount of time and take advantage of a lot of the musical theater training that we offer.
I love that. But does that mean that, so then in the core acting and musical theater classes, you won't necessarily be mixed with non-majors during the semester? That's just a summer separate program.
Correct. Our classes, because it's a competitive entry program, all of the major classes are majors only.
I love it. Very clear. Okay. Talk to me a little bit about outside of the theater program. So just what is the Western Michigan sort of university experience? I want to hear both kind of like, as a campus life and those kind of things, but then also just academically, what are the options that I'm getting outside of the theater world?
I'll start with Kalamazoo, which is an incredibly arts-rich community. We have 11 producing theaters in Kalamazoo outside of our university. We have a symphony orchestra, chamber music, the Gilmore Keyboard Festival. So it's a really arts-rich community. So if you're an arts student at Western, it's a great community to live in. You can work outside of the university. You can see something pretty much every night of the week. The music scene is awesome. So as an artist, it's a great community to live in as an artist. And as a result, the community is also very supportive of the arts at the university. So we have robust audiences. Immediately after COVID, we produced outside during COVID. Audiences came out and sat in the freezing cold. Back in the theaters, right? They are just rabid theater fans, which is awesome, right? It's just awesome for us. And it allows us to produce really an array of material to expose our students to a lot of different genres and have people show up for it. Western is what we call a heads-up campus. It's incredibly friendly. It's a really great place to go to school. It's a mid-sized campus. So it has all of the advantages of a larger school if you're looking for a lot of registered student organizations, a lot of intramural sports, a lot of clubs, a lot of culture activities, things you can do on the campus. So it's not like a little school. I went to a little school, right? You knew everybody at the end of the first 3 months there. You never met anybody else, right? But it's not so huge that you get lost.
Also, it's a campus school. So if you're living on campus, say if you're living in one of the student housings, you're not separated from campus life. It's an enclosed campus school, and also like all of the fine arts elements are really all around this beautiful plaza that we have right outside. So if you're taking a painting class and then taking a dance class and coming into an acting class, it's all in the same part of the university, and it's actually really pretty here.
We're also in, which is really unusual, a college of fine arts. Frequently, the arts are in arts and sciences. We are a college that only includes theater, dance, visual art, music, and design.
Mm-hmm.
So we have our own, so there's a tremendous focus, and we have tremendous advocacy at the university because we are a full college like engineering.
Yep.
Which is awesome in terms of our place at the university, which is important, especially now. Right.
We also have the #1 hockey team in the country.
Correct.
Hey now, okay.
Right. Hey now, yeah, just the national champions, right?
Love to hear that.
Exciting.
Everything you just said sounds so amazing, except I didn't miss the part about the freezing cold. How many people coming from Florida or California, if they end up at WMU, how many of them are like, oh my gosh, this is a surprising climate?
In my years here, it's actually gotten quite a bit warmer than it used to be. Yes, it is winter and it is Michigan, and you get good old kind of lake effect snow. So, and I have a good number of students, in particularly musical theater, who come from Texas and Florida and LA and had to buy their very first coat.
Yep.
But I happen to like seasons, and I have to say, like fall and spring in Kalamazoo, it's just like right now, it's stunningly beautiful. It's just a perfect time to be here.
Not surprised at all. Well, and while we're on that, you mentioned students from a different place in the country. What kind of proportion of your students, how many are Michigan based and or in the area, the sort of Midwest, and then how many are around the country in terms of a breakdown?
60% are Midwest contiguous states, 40% are rest of the country.
Totally makes sense. And talk to me a little bit about, you mentioned some successful alumni, but talk to me a little bit how you prepare your students for their launch into the business, from stuff like Showcase, but then also just, connections, how they're preparing to enter the industry.
Well, the way the musical theater performance area does it is basically we start with these music theater workshop classes. And so part of that is professional prep, where you're in class having both myself and other faculty, as well as guest artists that come in either in person and on Zoom to help the students develop all of the professional requirements that they're going to need to be successful as individual artists, with whether that's website development, headshots, resumes, getting their actors access, working with agents and casting directors and managers. So they get a lot of that information either from us or directly from casting directors and agents that we bring in frequently to do workshops, master classes. They're constantly getting both master classes here on campus and on Zoom from people in the industry in Chicago, New York, LA. And then once we kind of get into, we also bring in, during the year, I bring in about 6 summer theaters annually to do auditions on campus. So students can literally book summer work right from their music theater workshop class. And also encourage the students to go out to combined auditions, develop their self-tapes, submit, get themselves work, so that when they graduate, they don't just have university credits, they have professional credits. And that's something that we really promote and bring a lot of theaters here directly to campus, which has been very exciting and very successful. We have I talked to my juniors yesterday, and I think only 2 out of 16 did not book professional work this summer, and chose not to because they had to make money for college.
Yep.
And then the showcase year, every year we take our showcase to New York live. We've been at Green Room 42 now for several years. Usually the first Tuesday in March. This year we had 40 agents there, which is a good number. And of the students that went, 75% have already signed with agents, and 2 of them have already booked work through their agents. So they are moving.
And we record this in April for those who may be listening a little bit later. It's recorded in April. It's pretty good. It's only a month and a half. They signed, they're booking. It's great.
Yeah. And we kind of have kind of marked our territory as that early showcase. So the agents are pretty fresh and excited to be in the room. And I'm like, oh my God, another showcase.
Yeah.
That's been very, very successful for us. And we have a solid relationship with a lot of casting directors as well, who know us and frequently come. We also have a lot of alums working in the industry, primarily in Chicago, New York, LA, and Atlanta, and also in Seattle as well. And so we've brought them, if they're visiting, particularly if they're on tour, they'll often come in, offer master classes. When we're in New York, we always kind of bring our alums together. So we try to match alums with students who are graduating, so they kind of have a buddy system. So if you're graduating, moving to New York, we'll kind of try to match you up with an alum who will be your buddy for a year or two to kind of get you on your feet. Chicago, we have a lot of alums at Chicago working, so it's relatively easy there. So we try to do that as well.
And Joan, how does that work for the actors? And any different in terms of the actors and their launch into the business?
No, like as Jay said, we are very aggressive in our pursuit of guest artists that we bring to campus. It just, if you go to New York and try to get into a casting director's office, maybe it might take you a year or two. We bring that casting director to campus. You do a workshop with that casting director. You can send your resume in and they're going to open the envelope. And so we're focused on that. Also increases relevancy, right? They're out there every day telling us, oh, it used to be like if you're trying to doing a commercial with a leaf blower, you better have a leaf blower and you better be on your front yard, right? That was happening for like 6 months and then that stopped, right? So trying to make sure that our students are current with what they need to do. The PIFA actors do a virtual showcase, which for years of sort of testing in different models, our feedback from the industry was, well, agents and casting directors will come out for a live BFA MTP showcase, and you're getting the agents and the casting directors, not the third person in the office who was just hired on Tuesday, because they need them at 22, right? They're hungry for that. The agents and casting directors are not coming out in significant numbers at the top echelon. But we know that they're watching our virtual material. And it also provides a great launch for those students, many of whom are eager to go into film and television immediately. So it allows the agents and casting directors to see them in that format. And that's been very successful. The number of people, we track the views, we track how much of it they watch, we pull all those stats, and the response has been really.
I wish I could do that for self-tape. Sometimes I'm like, was that 10 seconds you watched of this? Or do you watch my whole thing? You immediately cast me out.
Did you even open it? Right. So we can track all that, which is helpful. So we can see how successful we are in that market. We have classes for the MTPs and the actors that are specifically focused on preparation for the industry. You can be as skilled as the best person out there, but if you don't know what you're doing, you don't know how to get in the door, nobody's ever going to know. Right. So it's a big part of our program to make sure that you're ready.
And then you mentioned, some of the different places people land. How many go right to New York? Maybe the musical theater majors. How many go right to New York? And then how many end up in Chicago, Atlanta, LA, et cetera?
Varies from year to year. This year, I'd say they're all going to New York except for 2.
The same 2 didn't book work. These lazy 2 are sitting there.
One of them actually has become a member of a company in Michigan. Another has always been planning to move to Chicago. So it kind of varies from year to year. I mean, the COVID years made going to New York certainly less appealing. But I think that certainly Broadway has bounced back, and there's a lot of tour work. A lot of our students actually right now I have, I think, 12 recent MTP alums who are out on cruise ships. So it's a great way to make some significant money and pay off your college loans and see the world. So that has been kind of an avenue that a lot of our students have pursued, and successfully.
I love it. Well, let's talk about costs then, and those loans that we may be paying back. So it looks like our crack research team found this looks like about 15,000 in-state and about 19,000 out-of-state. That's tuition. Those numbers sound right to you guys?
Yep, that sounds about right.
And then what does that mean in terms of what somebody is actually paying in terms of, are we getting any academic scholarships? Are we getting any talent-based scholarships? How does it work when you're coming in of what I could imagine my sticker to actually be, or my final price to actually be?
What your price is going to be will depend on what the government has determined your family can pay to a certain extent as well, right? So we get all of that information. So we do give academic scholarships. We give talent scholarships to our incoming students. Once you're here, we assume that everyone here is pretty darn talented. We don't differentiate and say, gee, Charlie, you are more talented than Jay, so I'm going to give you money.
I am, Joan, though. If you, just in case we're wondering.
Even if that was a given, right? Even if we knew that, we don't separate our students and create that kind of competitive environment. As far as finances work, I feel it's an undue burden on a student, right? If you have need, we give you money because you have need, and the university gives you money because you have need to make college more affordable. If you're a great member of our community and you're working as hard as you can and you're contributing everywhere and your work is consistent and we see that, you're going to get money for being a great citizen in our community. So we have people, we give out several $100,000 in scholarships from the department alone, not including what you get from the university. And what you get from the university has academic scholarships that they give out. If you come in with a certain GPA, you automatically get a certain amount of money for all 4 years you're here. If you come in with need, you automatically qualify for a whole bunch of stuff. So what you pay depends a little bit on what you need.
Yep.
So our university has this really unusual scholarship kind of competition, I guess, technically. And so if your listeners are listening and interested, getting your application into the university early and participating can allow you to be part of this scholarship, which is a $50,000 scholarship. So it's nice.
Yeah.
I believe.
Yes, and we have, well, it covers 4 years of tuition completely.
Yeah, I would think. Yeah, it's from in-state. That's basically there. Yeah.
Yeah, and we have a fair number of, we have more than our fair share of students who have received that scholarship.
Right now in music theater, we have 2 of them.
Wow,
which is
great.
The university only gives like 12 a year. So we have a disproportionate number of students. We also have a number of students that are involved in our honors college too, which is a great way for students who are academically gifted to get a pretty exciting college experience.
I'm so glad you said that, because you also bring me back to, I weaved it into a question about campus life, but we didn't really talk about academics in terms of what are those other options for, if I'm a musical theater major, I'm an acting major, and I want to experience other classes. How does that work in terms of my schedule of like, how much time do I have to take them? Is it possible to get a minor? Is it possible to get a double major? How do your students sort of take those academic opportunities?
Well, our students are required, because we are just to do a certain amount of general education, right? Which as most universities have. So you're expected to take one from this column and one from this column and one from this column. We have a fair number of students who minor. Now, our BFA degree is about 84 credits, 122 required to graduate.
Do you have a sense, just if you were to try to give a percentage of hours spent in the week, what is that? Is it 75% in your school, 25% outside, 80-20? What feels like, is there a percentage sort of feeling of like, how much time are they spending in the theater school?
It depends on your semester. A lot of our students really kind of front load the major. So it can be 80-20, but then like later on, it could be a little less expensive. We have a lot of students that do minors, and actually a handful that do double majors. We have a few right now. Music theater has become very popular to double major in music theater and in like theater management.
Right.
So
because you're doubling some of those credits, potentially.
Doubling within the department, but getting a much broader experience in theater.
Yeah.
I've had students that are, a lot of students minor in dance, but I've had students minor in education, journalism, foreign languages. So a lot it depends really kind of how much time you want to devote to academics versus kind of like a broader campus life. And also one of the things that's unusual about our department is you can choose, you're not required to accept roles in our department. You can choose, you can say like, this is a show I really want to be in, I'm focused on it. This is a show that I'd love to see, but this is not a show I really want to be in as a performer. And so you don't have to give us any kind of excuse or explanation. You just choose not to audition for it. And you can also decide, I actually was talking to one of our students who had came into college with a great deal of jazz choir experience, and was saying, I really want to do a semester where I sing with Gold Company, which is a world famous jazz ensemble that we have on campus here. And so they're choosing to take a semester, not participate in any of the theater department performances, and do a semester as a Gold Company member.
Really interesting. Yeah. I think often students are so concerned with what are the guaranteed performances. We never really think about the flip side. Like, what if I actually wanted to take a semester off and not necessarily be in performances? Right.
But we also have, you cannot be cast in more than one production in a given semester. And we do that so more students have an opportunity to be on stage. Some programs, the same 10 kids do all the shows, and the other 40 kids do not do any of the shows. So we spread that around. And we also have collaborative casting. All of the shows in any given semester are cast at the same time, which gives the faculty the opportunity to say, well, gee, Charlie, I'm casting first. I'm doing Julius Caesar. You can carry a spear in the back.
Right.
Or Jay's going, well, I'm going to do Sweeney Todd, and I'd be happy to put Charlie there. So it allows us to ensure that the students are having the best possible opportunity given what we're producing and what they need to learn and where they can land. We've been doing that for a couple of years, and it's been, I think, really, really great for the students.
Really smart. By far the easiest way to actually factor those things in.
For musical theater students, because at a lot of music theater programs, particularly ones that are housed in School of Music, they don't have the opportunity to do straight plays. And here, not only are they allowed to, they're actually really encouraged to audition and frequently are cast. So most of the MTPs graduate with at least one play on their resume and not just all musicals.
Yeah, it totally makes sense. Yeah. I mean, so often the dream is musical theater, the dream is Broadway, and then sort of the joke is as soon as you book Broadway, now you want to be on a TV show. It's just like immediately, as soon as you're like, well, now I got that dream and my next thing or whatever. I'd love to just go to, we're at this perfect time of year in, mid-April as we're recording. It's almost late April, really. But, as students are making their final decisions, you mentioned in the kind of like showcase world, hey, we've marked our territory as being kind of the early school. That's a good way to sort of kind of get an edge. What is the sort of pitch of like, imagining you have a lot of students are sitting down with you and they have multiple options. They have multiple good BFAs and they're trying to make their decision. What do you feel like is the distinguishing thing that you would go, this is why it should be Western as opposed to one of these other schools?
I would start with the fact that we're interested in developing you into the artist that you are meant to be, as opposed to the artist we have decided our department produces. That makes sense, right? A distinguishing factor. It's like, this is what we do, and everybody who comes out does this, versus saying, what do you do? What are your strengths? How can we build all of that so you are set up for success, given who you are and what you do? I think that's a super important thing. We have an exceptionally collaborative faculty, and that's not something that a high school student necessarily thinks about when they're selecting a school. But the ability of the faculty to work together, to work in each other's classrooms, to assist on each other's shows, coming in with certain skills in support of the needs, the very specific needs of any individual student, is exceptional. It's not a bunch of like, this is my program, these are my students, this is my program, these are my students. It's like, we work together. We talk about the students, we figure out what each student needs to move forward. And we can do that because we really get along. And our faculty are incredibly student-centered. And while it seems like every school should be that way, that is not a truth at a lot of places. And I think that's one of the things that really distinguishes Western.
And you don't, as an artist, you don't go to college to limit yourself. You don't go to college. Like, a lot of students come in and they say, Jay, what's my type? I'm like, this is not the time to do that. This is the time to expand, to explore, to try things. The only to be in a class and fail and say, not fail the class, but fail an exercise or do a song that just doesn't work for you, and discover things about yourself. It's always going to be someone who can kick higher or can do more turns or sing or skrelts higher, but there's never going to be another person who's actually you. And it is one of the things that I find most exciting about teaching is that, unlike, I don't know, a math class where everyone has to kind of get it at a certain point or they can't move forward, in a performance class, every student's kind of on their own timeline and they're going to make discoveries and have breakthroughs at different times. And as a faculty member, you need to be ready for that. You need to go into class and say, at any point, any one of these students is going to change, is going to grow, is going to have a huge breakthrough, and is going to be a completely different performer than they were yesterday. And you need to celebrate it. You need to figure out what the heck they did so you can do it again. And then you need to kind of say, okay, now this is who you are now. Let's keep moving.
Well said.
Is that our students are happy here. They love it. I mean, the energy in the building is great. How much time they have to do other things? We can't get them out of the building. Right? Like, go do it. And they're like, no. It's a strong community and it's supportive.
Yeah, that's a heck of a good pitch for parents. The students are happy here. I think parents are going, I like to hear that. Okay, we're gonna take a short break, and on the back end, we're gonna chat a little bit more about the audition process. So back in a flash. Okay, we are back with Joan and Jay talking about the program at Western Michigan University. And we're gonna talk a little bit about the audition process. I'd love to kind of just start from the wide perspective in terms of what is required in terms of an application, pre-screen, and audition, and sort of what that goes through and what the progression really is in terms of, I'd love to hear if you're willing to share like how many pre-screens you see, and then how many pre-screens are passed, and then how many people are seen at various places. So if you can give us a little bit of an overview of what the audition process looks like for you.
Sure. For musical theater, we use getaccepted.com. So all of our students have applied through that website. I see about 500 pre-screens. I would say I probably take about 80%.
Uh-huh.
Because people are doing well with their pre-screens.
Yep.
There's a separate application process for the university. So applying for the program through Get Accepted applies to the program, allows you to get an audition, but you still have to be accepted to the university, and so you still have to go to the university's website and apply through the university to be accepted here. We do auditions both live and virtually. They're basically the live auditions, we do 2 days of auditioning on campus and 2 days of auditioning at Chicago Unified Auditions. We also do 2 days of Zoom auditions, and you're also able, if it's really a hardship for any of those opportunities, to do a complete video submission audition as well. Although I do feel it's really helpful to at least do the virtual audition or a live audition just so we get to know you better. The audition requirements for musical theater, 2 1-minute cuts from songs, 1 1-minute monologue. And if you're in person, we do have a choreographer come in and teach a dance combination. If you are doing a virtual audition, a Zoom audition, you do need to submit a dance reel as well. We are not looking for finesse performances. Ultimately, I think people ask me, what are you looking for in an audition? I'm about
to ask it for you almost exactly now.
I'm looking for authenticity. I'm looking for you to be able to connect with the material that you're actually doing, so that the song actually means something. Also, I'm looking for technically strong singers, actors, and dancers. But I'm much more interested in someone who's bringing storytelling who engages than someone who's just super finessed and kind of delivers, but doesn't really make the material come alive.
And how are you viewing the pre-screens differently than the live audition? Is there, as you're getting from 500 to 400, then again, you're going to go from 400 to ultimately 15, though maybe we're a couple more accepted to get to 15.
Pre-screens is about good singing.
You're listening for a voice to go, there's a vocal talent here.
The pre-screen is simply one song, and you better sing it well. It's a video, so if you didn't sing it well your first take, don't send it. I'm looking for someone who's solid pitch, good breath control, and ultimately can connect with their lyrics.
And then how does that, you mentioned some of the authenticity. How does that change as you're sort of like, you're getting down from 400? What is the ultimate number that you may accept to then get to 15? Are you accepting 30? You're accepting 15 and then doing wait lists? How does that work?
I technically usually start with about 20 that we accept, and then wait list like another 30.
And so then how are we sort of trimming down to that perspective? What are you looking for of the 400 that you're seeing that's going to get from 400 to 50?
I'm looking for someone to move me. I'm looking for a performance where I'm like, oh, okay, I'm in your story. I care about what you're singing. I'm also looking for really terrific singers and actors and dancers. We have a strong reputation with dancers because we have such really excellent dance prep in this program. Unique in the kind of world of musical theater academics. And so we get a lot of really strong dancers, but they have to be able to sing and act. They can't just should be a dance major.
And do you look at like sort of a balance of like, hey, I want to have some really strong dancers and some really strong singers? If you end up with a class of all amazing dancers or all amazing singers, does it sort of matter to you in terms of how that comes in as of the 20?
Yes. I mean, because we're kind of a company. I mean, we're more or less a repertory company. We're doing shows all the time. So I can't have, 16 tenors. I try to have a nice spread of different voices, different technical skill sets and dance, so that we can cast many kinds of shows.
And how does it work are you conscious of stuff like, gender balance and race balance and height and size, different specifics of geography or the ability? Are there other things that you're factoring into in terms of sort of what a diverse class would look like?
Affirmative action is illegal in the state of Michigan. So we do not take gender into consideration when we're choosing a cast in a class.
I like it. Okay, great. If then you talked a little bit about the academics there. I'm only laughing for those on the audio of this. The vehemence of the jumping and
that's
the law.
That's the law. Right.
Following the law. Right. It's funny how those answers have changed significantly in the past 2 years compared to where we were and where we are now. But that's probably a whole other podcast. Okay.
We are looking for talented young artists.
Yes. If you had to estimate, how does it work in terms of then the academics of it all? Are those factored in only that they have to reach the sort of baseline of the university? Are students able who are maybe not quite at the academic level of the university, if you like them talent-wise? How does it work as you sort of work with the academics?
Our students actually tend to be pretty academically gifted. We have some of the strongest academics in the university majoring in theater, but they have to be accepted to the university.
Yeah.
And to be honest, a college, there are many ways to pursue performing, and college is one of many avenues. And if college is really not the way for you, we strongly suggest you pursue it a different way, because this is a liberal arts university. You're going to take gen eds, and hopefully you're going to be a really well-rounded human being when you graduate from college and know something about history and art and music, and it's something that I'm really an advocate for. I have many friends and colleagues who work at institutions where it is not liberal arts, it's a conservatory, and I want our students to be kind of as well-rounded human beings of the world, students of the world as they can be. I think that makes them stronger artists.
Yep. Do you factor in, or do you look at any of the letters of recommendation or essays, or do you take those into consideration, sort of the academic application aspects?
We do. We look at their transcripts. As well as their letters of recommendation. I mean, it's challenging to be a theater major, right? Because you're in classes all day and then you're working all, 6, 7, 8 weeks of the semester on a show. You have to be a better student, in college. So if you're a student who just really struggles with academics, and then you'll have trouble in any music theater program, right? Because it asks a lot of you.
Yep. I'd love to talk about in the audition, are you giving interview questions? Are you giving adjustments? Is there anything that goes beyond, if there's someone brings in the initial material, what is the interaction that happens that goes beyond the sort of what they've prepared?
I do give adjustments. It's limited time, particularly at Chicago Unified. So we're seeing so many students.
Right, you see 400 students over a couple of days.
But I do give adjustments frequently, or I'll also often ask them to sing their song directly to one of my I bring a lot of students with me to Chicago for the audition. I have 1 or 2 in the room, and I'll kind of say, well, instead of just singing the song, I want you to play a scene with another actor, sing your song to them, have a point of view, have an action that you're playing. So I frequently will do that. I also will. Some high school students don't necessarily know the play or in the context in which their song comes from, so I might fill it in for them and kind of help them kind of discover where the song works better for them.
Yeah. Totally makes sense. All right, as we move toward wrapping up here, I'd love to talk a little bit about where do you see the program 10 years from now? Is in terms of where it's been, do you feel like it's growing to become something different, or are there ambitions for it to grow to something? Is it about solidifying where we are? Where do you sort of feel the next steps for the program are?
Well, I think it's, what we try to do here is stay relevant, right? If I could see where the industry was going to be in 10 years, then I could probably answer your question more accurately, right? Because what we're really trying to do, it's a strong program. It's a strong and successful program now. The education is solid, the experience is good, our alumni are working, right? The three touch points of a program that you're starting with. Will it change? Absolutely. I mean, I think the world of changing and live performance is going to undergo a radical shift in the next 10 years, right? Theater, including musical theater and legit theater, is not going to look at all like it looks now. The number of theaters producing will probably be halved in the next 10 years. So I imagine we will be focused more on ensuring that we're preparing our students for the marketplace they're entering into, right? If there's half the number of jobs in legit theaters in this country, then everybody's going to be doing more media.
Yep.
The program is absolutely going to have to shift to adjust that. Casting will have changed. How you get jobs will have radically changed. It already has. Yeah. Live audition, maybe if you're lucky at the 4th callback, you meet somebody. Right? Yeah. Other than that, you're just sending in your self-tape and hoping somebody opens it up. Right. Yeah. A million thumbnails on the casting director's video screen. Right. Yeah. So I think what will look like in 10 years, hopefully, will be an accurate reflection back of what it takes to prepare a student for what that marketplace is. Yeah. I'm not smart enough to know yet what that is.
But smart enough to know how smart you are. That's a good answer. I like that. My last question. Oh, go ahead, Jay, please.
Oh, I was just saying kind of a couple specifics that we've just been evolving into in just the last few years. Please. One is, I think that even though the world has become more focused on our phones and people are becoming less connected, I think they are eager to come together and have a live theater experience. And one of the things we've been doing both in musical theater and in our acting program is incorporating a lot more immersion, a lot more immersive theater experiences, and also incorporating a lot more media. So I think that's a trend that's going to continue and probably grow. And it's interesting, like in my musical theater scenes class, everyone has to do a scene where they actually break the fourth wall and connect with audience members. And that's not something I used to teach, but now I think it's something that's very important to be able to do. And it's a style of acting that's it's unique and new.
Yep. Totally. I was talking about that.
But it's
no, it is. I was talking about during the pandemic, like all of a sudden people started singing into cameras, which was like such a weird experience that like had not been something where like I'm on this little thing and I'm trying to like do this big song into this little screen. Totally.
It'd be even smaller when someone looks at it.
Yeah, exactly. Then you're truly a thumbnail. All right. My last question, which I always end with, is just talking to the parents in this process. So do you have any advice from parents that you've encountered as they're going through this? It's obviously a very stressful process for their children. Any advice to sort of how they can best support their children to be successful in this process?
I think it's important to remember that as the student or as the family, you have some advocacy in picking the school. Like all casting or all selection, right? It disempowers the person who's auditioning and makes them feel like they're just hoping they'll be picked. They're just hoping that they'll get in, right? Empower yourself to think about the experience you want to have at school. Just to really look critically with the assumption that you will have some choice, and don't, so that you feel that you have some ownership of the experience, and you're not just being overwhelmed by just hoping that you'll do okay, right? Bring your best self into the room. You are who you are. You do what you do. You bring what you bring. Have faith in that. If it's not a match, it's not a match, and that's your whole life in casting. Right? It's not that you weren't the best actor in the room. It's just they wanted the guy whose ears were different. Right. And just always know that you have to be no reflection on present company.
Yeah, on my ears, exactly. Okay, fine.
Just know who you are and bring that in with confidence and say, "This is who I am. Am I a match?" If you're not a match, then it wasn't the right school for you anyway. Right. So if they're not picking you, then probably you wouldn't have picked them. Right. So find that strength in yourself. Try to find some peace and some cleansing before you start each experience and when you leave each experience, which is the same advice you give for auditions, right? Come in clean. When you're done, put it away. And then go on to the next experience. That is what actors do for their whole lives. So it's good to learn that now and to frame it that way now.
Well said. Jay, anything you want to throw in there?
I think that parents that support their students who are going into the arts are the most wonderful human beings around. It takes a village to create an artist, and it also, the students that come from families that are supportive, that are coming to the shows. I had students. I had a freshman who lives in Seattle. His parents flew in just to see a concert that we did of Titanic earlier this year. When we were doing a production of Dreamgirls right now, and I sat down in my seat and I found myself next to a woman that's a parent of a student who graduated 2 years ago. And she said she just came to school so often to support her own son that she couldn't stop coming to the shows. And she lived in Michigan. She just drove here from Chicago just to see students that were, in shows with her son 2 years ago. I think that I see parents coming frequently to the school, and we welcome them. And your student is going to be dynamically changing during their 4 years here, both as an artist and as a human, as they grow into their kind of adulthood and their self-identification. And I think that sharing that with your students and encouraging them is wonderful.
I love it. All right. If people want more information on the two of you and or Western Michigan, where's the best place? Do you like websites, social media? Where's the best place for them to check out more if they want more?
Follow us on social media. That's the most current and really kind of get to know the students. WMICH.edu if you want to look at the website. And we all welcome, if there's something you want to know about any program, go to our website, find the faculty member, shoot us an email. I promise you that we'll just write right back.
I love it. It was so nice chatting with both of you. Thanks for the time.
Thank you,
Charlie.
Take care.
Okay. Yes, yes, yes. So nice getting to chat with Joan and Jay. I initially resisted the multi-guest idea whenever possible, but we're getting more and more comfortable with it. And I think our past few multi-guest schools have really represented themselves and their programs well. I've always felt like it's nice to get what feels like a little bit more of an intimate conversation with a single person, but I'm starting to be swayed toward the merits of a twosome or maybe even a threesome. We'll stick with the twosomes for now. We'll see how it goes. Speaking of a twosome, we got a nice double dose of callbacks to last week's Takeaways podcast. We started off with Joan giving a version of my customer analogy, that idea being you are the customer, which I've used that a lot, but we went deep on that last week into the takeaways. And it was almost like she listened to last week's pod. It really perfectly aligned with what we talked about there in that idea of like the backbone it can give you if you can really treat this process like you are the customer, like you are the consumer. So that was nice to hear. But on the flip side of the double dose, a big face palm to my screed on pre-screen percentages, right? I just went into this deep diatribe about how often they are truly not a pre-screen, but instead a very competitive first audition, right? Often these schools may say no to 75% of the students and only say yes to 25%. And then, of course, you hear numbers of almost the inverse that really do make it sound more like a screening out in Western Michigan's case. So, of course, I'm joking about the facepalm, and it's just worth noting that just because I say 25% is a common number that you hear from some of the most competitive schools, that does not mean that you don't hear every other number on the spectrum as well. Of course you do, right? But like so many things in this process, there isn't a singular answer to sort of how it works. But since you're making these videos for all the schools, you're making a single video, whether you choose to call them pre-screens or video auditions, you do want to treat them with the seriousness as if they're for the most competitive version of what it could be, right? Or perhaps you can think of like the version where they're going to watch it 20 times throughout the year, where we've heard some of the podcasts talk about that. They're going to watch it 20 times for the students they accept, at least, right? Even though treating it that way with that much seriousness and preparation, that might be a bit overkill for some schools that where they only view it once, or they only sort of view it as a little bit more of a, hey, we're just checking to make sure that you're talented and in good shape. I'm not saying those schools doesn't exist, but I'm just saying for a lot of schools, it's not that way. So from your perspective, if you're looking at those most competitive schools, you do have to treat that seriously. So a little bit of facepalm, not that, of course, it really contradicts what I said, just was a data point in the other direction. Okay, I've talked about this a bit before, but I liked how Jay was talking about specific alumni connections with WMU. I think that's worth listening for and trying to investigate as you parse out different schools and their answers about what they can do for you as you launch into the business. As you'll notice, a lot of these programs have a showcase in some form, likely both in person and digital, but maybe one of those two. And we've talked about before, just noting how schools are being creative and maybe doing additional things with their showcase that isn't just this idea of we're at this location and hoping people show up, right? But I'll also add in that I think the more specific alumni opportunities you become aware of, I think these are really gold for young actors. I think that students at 17 and parents too often overemphasize the perceived reputational differences between schools. Like they think that like you're going to show up in New York City fresh off graduating from school X, and that the industry is going to say, school X, okay, that is the 13th best school in the country. You stand in this line. Or if you go to school Y, they'll say, oh, I'm sorry, that's the 27th best school in the country, right? And it just doesn't work that way for the industry at large. There definitely are a handful of schools that people have really heard of that have really strong reputations, and that might help get your foot in the door kind of across the board, right? Even with someone that you don't have a personal connection with. And there is also absolutely a difference when someone looks at a resume and sees professional training from a school of good repute versus a school they've never heard of, or maybe seeing no school at all, right? But it's those minor differences in competitiveness that I think parents tend to kind of overemphasize, and that not only do industry professionals not particularly care about those differences, but like they don't particularly know, right? They don't all listen to the podcasts, the more fool them. And they likely couldn't tell you if Syracuse or Ithaca was more statistically difficult to get into in 2025, right? They couldn't necessarily tell you if Millikan is more competitive than Western Michigan. Nor would any perceived difference, if they felt a difference, if they perceived a difference, nor would that difference be likely the reason that you did or didn't get called into a specific room if you seemed like someone who was right for a part. However, what really could be a boost is if someone on the creative team was actually an alum of one of those specific programs, right? Like when I got cast in Shakespeare in the Park, it wasn't because Jordan Thaler, who was the casting director, was necessarily so in awe of Carnegie Mellon training. It's because he went there. And then he came back to our school, he met the people, he saved our resumes, right? That's where it's just more of a people and connections business than it's like a numerical one, right? And where alumni networks can be extremely helpful, right? Many people find their first agent, find their second agent or the third agent as well. They'll get hooked up with directors and casting directors directly through classmates and schoolmates, as well as alum of their specific programs, right? When my friend Ethan came to New York City, he was living in Chicago for a lot of years. He didn't know many people. I introduced him to a director friend that I was working with at the time. And then he went on to cast Ethan in several specific shows, right? That wasn't because of the reputation of Carnegie Mellon that got him in the door. It was the personal reference of knowing me. I said, Ethan's great, right? So it's about those alumni networks and direct opportunities to meet actual people and make connections more than just like the value of what you think your school name is, especially versus another school that's in a similar competitive category. And that kind of thing may be obvious to people who know the industry or have a sense of this industry, right? But to people who are a bit more numerical thinkers in the kind of US News and World Report kind of way, it's hard to get out of that kind of thinking. Like, is this school the 31st ranked school or the 45th ranked school? And it's just not quite like that, right? It's not at all that reputation doesn't matter. It really can. It's just that it's not so numerical, nor is it really objective, nor is it universally agreed upon. Okay, and I thought you'd get this far without me doing the takeaway that I sort of mentioned and laughed at. No, we can't go through a whole podcast and not do a takeaway on affirmative action. I did mention that like doing a full overview here would be like a whole other podcast. So I'm not going to go deep on this question of affirmative action and all my thoughts on it for many reasons. First, I do try to keep this podcast as apolitical as it's possible to be when covering the intersection of art and education, trying not to bring any more of my personal bias than I have to, while I'm also still trying to give you like my specific and authentic point of view. There are times that politics does worm its way in, of course, we can't prevent that. And also, secondly, I do think you don't really need to hear from me specifically in terms of giving you my deep thoughts on affirmative action, whether you're going to agree with them or not. I do recognize that this is a complicated issue with a lot of different perspectives, all of which I think can be valid, or many of which I think can be valid. And I think it's one of those cases where a lot of people who are arguing very strongly can fall into a bit of straw man argument, right? As if all the people who are in favor of affirmative action are against any sense of merit in admittance, or that all the people who are against affirmative action are just incurably racist, right? Without going too deep into my views on the matter, I'll say I don't believe either of those things are true about most people who have good faith disagreements on this topic. And I know people who have strong opinions on this topic in both directions. And I imagine just generally, maybe this thirdly, but generally you don't need me, a now sadly middle-aged white cisgender man, to kind of explain the complexity of something which is complicated when you talk about like the intersection of class and race and gender, and how they work in theory versus how they work in practice on college campuses. As fun as it might be for me to try to do that intellectual exercise and walk the tightrope of this like nuanced question and really try to give you all my thoughts on it, I'm not going to do that. There's a long way of saying I'm not going to do it. However, what I will say, what I will do for you right now, and where I think maybe I have a more unique perspective that might be interesting to you as a listener, is that I'll bet most of you who listen to the college episodes have not gone back and listened to every college starting in 2021. And I certainly know that basically none of you will have followed this process the way I have for now fully 20 years. I've now done it for 20 years. I think I'm into my 21st year in sort of being intimately involved in the college audition process. So I will just note that the way this topic has changed in how schools discuss it over the past 20 years is truly wild. And to zero in on the podcast, right, the past 4 years, the way schools were answering this question in 2021 and 2022 versus now in 2025, I mean, incredibly different, right? It's night and day. If you listen back, you're going to hear a lot of professors tripping over themselves and sometimes really tripping over their tongues and struggling a little bit, trying to tell you how much they consider DEI the forefront and the heart of what they are about, and that nothing is more important to them than that, even and above talent, right? And then some would maybe give a more moderate answer if that's where they were back then, but they're still going to, talk about how they balance DEI factors in and really try to emphasize how important it was. Every program did some version of that if you listen to that 21 and 2022. And then as the years turned, you heard a kind of steady progression of people who gave different versions of this question, kind of shifted just, tonally, right? Maybe they'll say, yeah, we consider it, but ultimately we're looking for unique individuals. That became a very popular answer, which of course the unique individual part was always true. It's just sort of how they're trying to head nod toward the idea of DEI and considering it without coming out and saying that they actively consider it. Some of these schools for legal reasons, some of them because maybe their scholastic administration wants them to be careful of any kind of political headwind, right? I have definitely noticed, though, that progression in the past few months of interviews, maybe starting around when the Supreme Court case happened, but especially in the past few months. I told my mom the other day, right after we recorded this very podcast, my mom is a law professor, so I was sort of interested in these issues in general, that I was like, the interview finally happened. I was waiting for the day where a professor would try to emphasize how much they don't consider race and gender and their decision-making factors. And that is the first time that I've heard a professor really emphasize it in that way or say it that clearly. It's the closest, the closest we've gotten so far. We heard some schools say like, hey, we definitely weight talent most heavily. We've heard some professors say, if that meant we got a class of all female identifying students, so be it. Though they would say that about gender, they did not say that about race. We have not heard an answer that was this succinct and clear in terms of saying it's illegal, we don't consider it, right? And I'm curious, we'll see. I'll be interested in the next 6 months of, do we hear more and more of that? Or do we now hear a little bit more of the pendulum swinging back the other way of people saying, I defy this current political climate? I do also think it's worth noting, I guess the second thing that I'll throw out there sort of as an observation, besides the ways that the landscape has shifted and sort of the pendulum has swung back and forth, I do think it's worth noting that I don't think the school's behavior changes nearly as much on the pendulum swing than the rhetoric when it comes to this issue. I do think we have, in the post-George Floyd era, seen some distinct changes that some schools have made, and some of them have really become ingrained, and some of them maybe have rolled back slightly. But I think it is more of a rhetorical shift than an actual one, or a bigger rhetorical shift than an actual one, I should say. I don't think the schools who said diversity was their primary factor were ever truly discounting their idea of merit, again, however you can define merit in this field, as much as they might have said they were. I don't think that was actually happening in practice. And I don't think schools that now say we don't consider it at all, this is not a shot at WMU, I'm just saying in general, schools that have said we don't consider it at all, I don't think they're truly not considering people's diverse experiences and backgrounds whatsoever. Of course, that's my opinion, right? And I guess that's maybe the most important part of this conversation, this idea of opinion, is that it can only ever be opinion when we're talking about artistic merit, right? I use that phrase, subjective meritocracy, but in this case, subjective is the operative word. Unless a school were to give an artistic merit score separately from a diversity score, which a couple schools were proudly doing at one point, but unless they're literally doing that, there's not really a policy to reverse or to sue about unless schools chose to have the fight. They would have to actively choose to say, I would like to have this fight, and therefore I'm splitting these two. Right? If a professor just sees two students and chooses to accept one over the other, how could that ever be litigated unless they explicitly wrote down, hey, I think person A is better, but I'm choosing person B because of their race or gender. So that's really all to say. I still do enjoy doing a version of this question, or at least I think it's interesting. I think it's helpful to hear where schools are at and how they're thinking about putting a class together, right? And all the different questions of how you put a class together, right? And I think it is a complicated and difficult question, especially if you're at a school that does not yield 100% of your first offer. So you don't have complete control over what putting the class together looks like, right? But if you happen to be one of those people who listens back to all those episodes from 2, 3, 4 years ago, and maybe you don't listen to every episode, just do be aware that I think the change in this answer is likely more due to the changing political and legal climate than necessarily a huge distinction between the ethos of these schools, right? You can still note those distinctions, and there are distinctions between how schools talk about it, right? That happen, especially I would note the distinction that happen within a given season, within a world that are not too far away from each other time-wise, but I wouldn't try to do like a cross-era comparison here, right? In sports, we're always talking about, you can't really compare LeBron James and Michael Jordan. They're just played in different eras, right? And I guess my point is, amazingly, even 2 or 3 years feels like a different era in the COVID world and the post-COVID world, and all those sort of, it's been some small eras that have turned into sort of larger eras as we've gone. Well, if that takeaway felt like an era, it's because it probably was. This episode is now over, having been produced by Meghan Cordier and Kelly Prendergast, with social work by Jordan Rice. Please follow us at Mapping the College Audition on Instagram and check us out at mtca.com to see our amazing class of 2025 on May 1st and for information about our upcoming Meet MTCA workshops on May 7th. Singular workshop, though I guess you can hear about all the workshops in general. To my young artists out there mapping their journeys, trust that you are enough for the right program, just as you are right now, and as the consumer that you are right now and will be, and keep striving. We'll catch you next week.